Hi, my name is Jackie Tetzloff, and this is my final book summary of Brain Rules. As I've read this book, I've just really enjoyed. It was just a really nice book to read. I felt I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot of things that I want to implement into my life, and as I'm a teacher, a lot of things I want to implement into my students' lives and into my classroom. As I was trying to find the four most important chapters, I realized that this is a harder task than it seems. Um, I found all of the chapters to be really informational, so narrowing it down was hard. The ones that I narrowed it down to were exercise, sleep, attention, and exploration. I thought they really carried important messages with them that that would be very useful in my students' lives. So those are the ones that I chose. Um, I will I will start on exercise. This chapter really explained why we are called to be active human beings. It explains that we are not made to sit at a desk for 8 hours every day. So the question arises, why are we making our students do this? Within my classroom, I would really like to implement kinesics learning strategies. I feel I would be creating an environment that allows them to focus and do better by letting them move and release energy. The book explains that we learn more by being active, so we should promote students to keep active outside the classroom, outside the homeroom classroom, as well with physical activity, recess, and physical education. This is important to teach students because if they understand the importance of physical education, they will be more likely to continue to do it in their future. We should prepare students for a successful future, and by teaching them and having them participate in activities, we are doing so. I would teach students how to implement exercise into their lives by directly getting them moving. So that's my excerpt that I kind of wrote up about exercise. Um, and the book really explained that people are happier if they are moving, and um, that wasn't a huge surprise to me because I've read other studies on that. So we should do what's best for our students and get them moving. And if we get this pattern of like we like to stay active in a child's life, then as they grow older, they will continue that pattern, and they they will just be that will be very beneficial for their health, for their well-being, just overall it will really enhance their lives. I will move on to sleep next. Okay. I chose sleep because of how much it affects our lives. If we don't get enough sleep, we are not going to learn, function, interact with people, or enjoy life the same way. Within my classroom, I want to teach students about the significance of sleep so they will value it more. I want my students to come to class ready to learn, not as a sleep deprived zombie. I would love to implement a 30-minute nap period into the day to help my students be more productive. However, I know that this is something that would have to be approved with a school board or a principal or both. So I don't know if that is entirely feasible, but I would really love to do that. But because I would really love to do that because of some of the points the book pointed out on how beneficial just a little short nap is to the productivity and the overall well-being of a student or just an individual the rest of the day. Um, I feel as though if people truly understood sleep or understand the benefits sleep has, they would not deprive themselves as much as many of us do right now. Sleep is important no matter what you're doing, but especially in learning. I can teach students to learn how much sleep their body needs and try to reach that number every night. So within my classroom, I would really just love to teach my students why sleep's so important, how they should listen to their bodies, on what their bodies are telling them about sleep, and really try to encourage them to follow those patterns. Yeah, so again, just sleep is so important that's why I included it in here. It really affects our lives very directly. So that is why I chose that. I'll move on to attention next. I chose attention because it has has to do directly with how we learn. Excuse me, that didn't come out very smoothly. Within my classroom, I would be sure to make sure students are focused on task one at a time, because within this chapter it kind of explains that we cannot truly multitask on having a conversation and at the same time working on an assignment. We're either doing one or the other, and we all know students that they're most likely having that focusing on that conversation instead. So within my classroom, I would really like to implement things where I explain why. Sometimes I think growing up, I found myself like, oh, why can't I visit with my friend, or why can't I do this while I'm doing this? And I felt like the teacher just didn't really understand me all that well. But so as a classroom teacher, I would really like to more so just explain why to my students. This is why you can't do that. And I think that by explaining that, I would be helping my students understand and understand some of my rules, but I also would be helping them kind of prepare for the future more. So when they come to some of their first jobs and they have to learn these new procedures and everything, they try not to multitask and learn them incorrectly, or learn them as they're distracted, but rather they really focus on one task at a time, then move to the next. So I think this would be creating a life skill for them. And I also included in this that sometimes students have trouble paying attention because they have pent up energy that they haven't been able to release. And so I thought that with a kinesics classroom, students would be able to pay attention because they are being able to release the energy that could be distracting them with either just all the different forms of bike desk, or just a little treadmill as they're doing stuff, all those different forms, and so they could pay more attention to what's going on. Okay, my last one, exploration. This was a really great chapter to explain how we learn. I really like the baby analogy of showing like, oh, we are more like babies than we think of how we learn. Like babies are constantly always getting their nose into stuff, always putting things in their mouth, staying actively learning, and that's truly how we also learn, as the book explains. So as a future teacher, I would love to implement this form of education into my classroom as much as possible. We learn by not necessarily seeing, but rather doing. So I would really like to keep that in mind as I create lesson plans and look at different activities. I could implement this into my classroom by having many hands-on experiment-like activities. I think my students would really enjoy that. To teach my students how to implement exploration into their lives, I'd be incorporating many hands-on creative thinking projects that practice this skill. If I am teaching in a kinesics classroom, I can have students get up and get on their feet to explore what they are learning with hands-on activities. So I feel like this would really involve a kinesics classroom as well. So those are the four chapters that I found most important. But as I said in the beginning, there are definitely a lot of other really interesting things that happened in the other chapters that I loved. Um, I really enjoyed reading this book, and thank you for listening to this. Bye bye.